This is the High School Crossfire. Welcome back.
So, panel. First things first, team opposition comes here and says something that says maybe in the first place they want to curb illiteracy as the cause of what? As the cause of human trafficking. But then on the other hand, we come and tell you that we are what? We are stating the fact that the cause of human trafficking particularly is poverty and unemployment. And then we look at what effectiveness their side has. They come and say they want to what? To stop illiteracy. But for how long has the government been stopping illiteracy? That's the basic bureaucracy we are talking about. Even though we are giving the government of Uganda at a point in time whereby we're going to give them at a high level, maybe let's say their rules are working out and the law structure is correct, they will still fail because in the first place we are looking at a hierarchy and a big process of what? Of laws to be made. So their case does not stand, and they clearly fail to understand it. So maybe we come here and tell you that in the first place we are curbing what? We are curbing poverty and unemployment because we see that these community initiatives are maybe providing circles to people that is helping them start up small scale businesses, and this is helping to prevent what? To prevent poverty. In preventing poverty, then human trafficking. This is how our side of the house wins over theirs. Secondly, they come here and maybe talk about apprehending human traffickers. But what does this in case mean? The Human Trafficking Article 2 of the Constitution was stated in 2009, dear judges. Since 2009 until now in the country, the human traffickers law is still standing and it's not being even apprehended or implemented. But then they still come here and say that the government is working hand in hand, maybe with the UN or anything that works to deal with human trafficking. If they think that even though we are working on basic standards of the government, their law does not stand, basing on bureaucracy and the poor law structure of the government. Rest, I will take you later. So in the first place, if we are looking at community-based initiatives, what does our side have over theirs? Our side has things like law, maybe it has things like maybe a list of frameworks and list of the bureaucracy that is needed to take on the laws, because we see that if it's an urgent matter, as my first speaker came and said that there are 23.63 billion victims of human trafficking. So this is an urgent matter in the country at a point in time. So we see that we need, I'm going to check it later, so that we see that at a point in time we really need to make this effective. We don't need the bureaucracy. Maybe you have to write a letter to the president to maybe apprehend the fact that they are needing human traffickers to be punished or anything like that. We don't need prisoners, we don't need wardens that are going to take them out of prison even though they've been put in prison in the first place. We don't need stuff like that. But if they fail to come and understand and then they give a case scenario of the country being at a best case scenario, their case still doesn't stand, because we see that in the first place community-based initiatives are more effective. In what ways, dear panel? We see that community-based are allowed.
So I want to ask a simple question. Does government wait for human trafficking to happen? Does government wait for human trafficking to happen as opposed to community-based initiatives waiting for the problem to occur in the first place?
Government does not wait for human trafficking to happen. What happens in this case scenario? This case scenario happens in a way that we are looking at the bureaucracy. We are looking, it may not wait for it to happen, but it's going to take some more time. We are going to need to have a long story of maybe laws and a framework. Then we see the urgency in this. The urgency in this is that its specificism, as our side said, that community-based initiatives are more specific. We are going to know the kind of person that you're living with. If at all the home said the person is lost, we are going to know that we are knowing that the person is lost, and we are going to have to work upon it. Their case does not stand maybe that because it has an omnibus approach. We see that an omnibus approach is going to be in a way that maybe people are going to be approached from the higher standards to the low standards, and this does not stand in any way of argument to preventing human trafficking. Maybe another case in time, we see that they come and talk about effectiveness as having maybe resources, more supremacy, more bureaucracy, and corruption in that case. But for how long has the government been fighting corruption? For how long has the government been trying to be transparent? It has still failed. Even though we try to say maybe for debate's sake that the government is going to be transparent, their argument does not still stand because we are more transparent. I beg to rest.
Thank you, panel. This house believes that community-based initiatives are more effective than top-down approaches, initiatives in preventing human trafficking. What we get from affirmative is that one side, which just chooses not to listen and that chooses the other side of not speaking. Our first speaker comes and says things like Middle East consultants and such labor companies were abolished or maybe banned by government after they trafficked people, right? We talk of things like embassies in those countries, and all this has been done by government. So coming and arguing that government has done nothing is just a case of not listening, not our problem. In their first speech, the first speaker contradicts herself. She comes and says in India, when community-based initiatives came up, things worked out, right? The same person says, when government came in and amended laws, more people participated, right? This is a typical example of top-down approaches, because when government amended the law, things got better, right? So I think that's a bad thing from their side. They still come and argue about bureaucracy. Their point is null and void, because they only argue that legal frameworks take time to make, right? But then, legal frameworks are not made when a problem happens. They are made wrong before. So no matter how long they take, there is enough time to make them. But their problem is, people work on emotion, right? They only wait for the problem to happen. For example, if this area has no human traffickers, communities won't get engaged. But then government has that responsibility, whether it is happening or not, it is ready and there to do what is supposed to be done. So that caters for the whole point of urgency. Communities will not always be prepared for human traffickers, but police is always there to do this, and it is more urgent, and I don't think there is anything like bureaucracy in arresting a person, right? They come and say, maybe communities have provided employment opportunities, but we think this is an assertion, because from their point of view, these communities are most likely made of poor people, right? So we don't think a poor person is most likely going to provide jobs to other poor people. So at their best, they still fail on that, right? We come and say, government has managed to set up things like literacy, schools and stuff, though they even credit us and say this can also help reduce human trafficking, and we thank them for that anyways. We talk of resources, right? Things, we have big fish in this. Like the Epstein case, you have very big people. Human trafficking is not just one single person doing this. We have people with a lot of money involved in human trafficking. We don't expect a village or maybe a parish to go and arrest these people or maybe say anything about them, because they have more money than them. But government can do this. We think another contradiction or maybe a concession to our case is when they bring in the UN. You cannot come and say that the government is not a part of community-based initiative and then argue that an organization of governments then becomes a community-based initiative. We think that's a contradiction, and they should not be credited for that. If a government is bigger and cannot be considered a community-based initiative, then you cannot go to something bigger and call it down level, or that is more of a top-down approach in this. They come and say wrangles in government, right? Because government have wrangles, maybe international cooperation might be impossible. But we think then, if Uganda has a wrangle with Kenya, then you don't expect maybe the people from Kampala to have agreements with them, right? So at their best, if wrangles among governments, then communities can also do nothing. And we still win, because governments have a higher chance of having international cooperation than communities, right? Then we also talk of things like porous borders, things like money to spend, and things like, from their speech, they also agree that government has a budget that can put into these things. This is also a concession that government has resources to do these things. They also need to come and urge on the point of recurrence, right? Because when people see that human trafficking has reduced, then they become reluctant and resort to their lives again. So this means human trafficking gets another gap to happen again. But with government, it will always be ready, because if he's a policeman, that's what he's looking for, that's what he's paid to do, and that's why responsibility becomes important if you are to tackle human trafficking. Then things like urgency don't work in today's debate. Things like social media also don't work, because social media is first of all a place for fun, and even if they argue that it can be used for advertising and things like that, then it becomes a mutual ground, because government can also use it to send information to people. So it is a mutual ground, and they should not be credited for that anyways. Things like employment can be better be done by government, and things like India also don't work in today's debate. Thank you. I beg to rest.
This is the High School Crossfire. We'll be back in a minute.